Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction is a movie by Tarantino made in 1994. It includes a cast of very well-known actors and actresses such as John Travolta, Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson, Christopher Walken, and Uma Thurman. Pulp fiction is a term used to describe a huge amount of creative writing available to the American public in the early 1900s. The creative stories were termed pulp magazines because of the low-quality paper used between the covers. The word pulp, however, can also mean a soft, moist, shapeless mass of matter. This could be like a matter made of different ingredients, just like the film is made of different stories and themes. In this case, different genres and themes mix in with the pastiche and intertextuality that appears in the movie. Pulp fiction portrays postmodernism in various ways. For example, the narrative structure. The film isn't told chronologically. For instance, there's a flashback to Butch's childhood, and you see Vincent die in the middle of the film, but at the end there's another flashback where Vincent is alive. Therefore, he remains the main character even though he dies. Also, the beginning of the movie is the end. The story is told in a very non-linear way. The film has one main story and 3 smaller chapters, the first one being Vincent Vega and Marcellus Wallace's wife, the second one, the gold watch, and lastly, the bunny situation. The other chapters don't really have a conclusion, and therefore they are left open for the readers to interpret. Another postmodern feature in pulp fiction is pastiche. When Vincent and Mia are at the restaurant, the atmosphere is like the 50s. The setting drifts between the 50s and the 80s. There are references to the 70s that are shown through Jules, the way he looks, and the fact that he talks about a show from the late 70s called A Flock of Seagulls. The movie also mixes different genres like humor and crime, 2 genres that are not typically connected. Therefore, the mood changes. An example of this is when Butch and Marcellus are chasing each other and end up in the shop. The mood changes from exciting to provocative and serious, and then back to humoristic.
The characters in Pulp Fiction are all involved in crime and all have a connection to Marcellus. The characters in the movie all have a good and a bad side to them, even the ones you would think of as innocent. An example of this is the shop owner, later accompanied by the cop. They suddenly turn into the bad guys instead of Vincent and Jules. For the first half of the film, the viewer relates to Vincent and Jules. Then the film changes from their perspective to Butch the boxers. After following his story for a while, the audience end up gaining sympathy for him, even though his success means killing Vincent, who is sent to kill him. Then the film again returns to the story and Vincent and Jules, without Vincent though. When it comes to intertextuality, the movie has a lot of postmodern references, like yuppies, meaninglessness, consumption, and greediness. Throughout the movie, a quote from the Bible is repeated several times. It's a passage from Ezekiel's book called 20:17. Jules likes to preach this before he kills someone. He even says himself he has no clue what it means, he just finds it suitable for the situation. There is a very distinct example of intertextuality in the scene where Butch picks up different tools and weapons to defend himself with. The hammer refers to the toolbox murders. The baseball bat refers to Walking Tall and the Untouchables. The chainsaw, of course, refers to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the katana refers to Seven Samurai, the Yakuza, and Shogun Assassin. By incorporating these intertextual references, it includes the viewer in the film. It gives the audience something they can relate to, thus creating viewer inclusion. The restaurant and bar scene with Mia and Vincent refers to the 50s, and when they begin dancing, it refers to 2 earlier movies in which John Travolta has been featured. Those are Saturday Night Fever and Grease. This movie has many common features in relation to Quentin Tarantino's other movies. For an example, more than one storyline, atypical and fragmented narration, mixed genres, and it is heavily inspired from certain periods throughout history.
Pulp Fiction's use of non-linear narration, copious references to other movies and its offbeat dialogue, combined with Tarantino's unique style make the viewer aware that there is something different about this movie. George Ritzer said that in the modern world everything seems pretty clear-cut, but on the cusp of the postmodern world, many things seem quite hazy. This is the case with regard to classifying pulp fiction. In contrast to most previous American modernist movies, which fit into a specific genre, western, comedy, gangster, combat movie, etc., Pulp Fiction breaks with all of previous formulas and is therefore difficult to categorize. Is it a gangster film, a film noir, a black comedy, or even a musical? In most modernist movies, the protagonists are heroes that stands up for what is right even against enormous odds. Even anti-heroes will end up doing the right thing, even if they had to struggle most of the film to get there. This is mostly because the filmmaker usually wants the audiences to sympathize with the lead characters. In Pulp Fiction there are no heroes in a traditional sense. The protagonists are extremely violent and show no remorse for their actions, yet due to the way that the violence is handled or styled in the movie, plus that it is treated as normal behavior and is accompanied by rather inane dialogue, the characters become sympathetic and likable. In fact, the most amoral character in the film, Vincent Vega, is probably the most likable. The film is edited in a very postmodern way because of the way that the narrative isn't shot in a linear fashion. The film tells three interlocking stories which unfold out of chronological order so that it starts and ends by doubling back on itself to the same location. Most of the middle happen after the ending, and a major character appears on screen after he has been shot dead. The way that the film has three main stories featuring characters that float in and out appears to have more in common with a novel than with a film. Tarantino used the chopper-up narrative to add another layer to the story. Every one of the major sequences in Pulp Fiction ends with a character being saved or redeemed. If the film was shot in order, this wouldn't be possible without being repetitive. Shooting it out of sequence keeps the audiences interested. The dialogue in Pulp Fiction is what makes the film stand out from modern movies. Andy Warhol said once that the outtakes of most pictures would be more interesting than what's put into a picture. Tarantino releases this by making most of the main dialogue scenes in Pulp Fiction the kind of stuff that would be cut out of ordinary picture. Dialogue is traditionally used primarily to push ahead a film's plot and also to develop a character, but in Pulp Fiction the dialogue serves its own purpose rather than the plot's. A great example is the scene where Vincent and Jules are on a job for Marcellus and are discussing the subject of foot massage on their way up to their intended victim's apartment. They get to the apartment and instead of entering like they would in any other movie, they decide that they are early and walk away so that they can continue the discussion.
It's the same fucking ballpark. Whoa. Stop right there. Eating a bitch out and giving a bitch a foot massage ain't even the same fucking thing.
It's not. It's the same ballpark.
Ain't no fucking ballpark, neither. Now look, maybe your method of massage differs from mine, but you know, touching his wife's feet and sticking your tongue in the holiest of holies ain't the same fucking ballpark. It ain't the same league. It ain't even the same fucking sport. Look, foot massages don't mean shit.
Have you ever given a foot massage?
Don't be telling me about foot massages. I'm the foot fucking master.
You given a lot of them?
Shit, yeah. Got my technique down and everything. I don't be tickling or nothing.
Would you give a guy a foot massage?
Fuck you.
You give him a lot?
Fuck you.
You know, I'm kind of tired. I could use a foot massage myself.
Yo, man. You best back off. I'm getting a little pissed here. This is the door.
There it is.
Time you got?
7:22 in the a.m.
No, ain't quite time yet. Come on, let's hang back. Now look, just because I wouldn't get no man a foot massage, don't make it right for Marcellus to throw Antoine off a building into a glass motherfucking house fucking up the way the nigga talks. That shit ain't right.
The camera, which has followed Vincent and Jules to the apartment, waits outside the door and pans to look at them as they walk on past, still lost in their conversation. By leaving the camera there, it makes the camera seem almost impatient as the discussion continues, and by delaying the extended action and violence in the way for 2.5 minutes, it builds up the tension. Like Goddard, Tarantino uses this scene to comment on or even criticize the way that action sequences in movies during the early 1990s had become predictable. The entire film is made up from storylines, dialogue, camera angles, character hairdos, and weapons borrowed from or inspired by a vast variety of different movies. Quentin Tarantino sums this up in an interview when he said, I always hope that if 1 million people see my movie, they see 1 million different movies. When Butch decides to rescue Marcellus, he runs through a variety of weapons, which bring to mind a variety of other movies. The baseball bat recalls Joe Don Baker in Walking Tall, the chainsaw recalls Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the samurai sword recalls Sonochiba in Shadow Warriors. This is typical postmodern theater. The name of the boxer who Butch is supposed to take a dive against in Floyd Wilson, which is also the name of the fighter that Terry Malloy took a dive against in On the Waterfront. To conclude, the movie Pulp Fiction represents a significant enough change from previous movies to be classed as postmodern. The fact that it borrows so much from movie history is itself a postmodernist feature.